In 2010, FIFA awarded South Africa the right to host the World Cup. As a condition of hosting, FIFA insisted that Cape Town build a brand new 68,000-seat stadium on the city's waterfront, with Table Mountain in the background. When Cape Town officials suggested using the existing Newlands Stadium instead, a perfectly adequate venue that could have been upgraded at a fraction of the cost, FIFA flat out rejected it. And a FIFA delegate explained why. This is genuinely what he said. 1 billion television viewers don't want to see shacks and poverty. So Cape Town built what FIFA wanted, and it ended up costing them $600 million. Today it hosts the occasional birthday party and the occasional concert, and it loses between $6 and $10 million every single year. This video is about something that never really gets talked about, because every time the World Cup comes around, obviously everyone is too focused on the football to think about what happens after the World Cup finishes. The stadiums that get built at FIFA's insistence, to their very specific specifications, used for just 39 days and then left to drain public money for decades, all while FIFA is already counting the revenue from the next tournament they're looking forward to. The same story repeats itself time and time again. Here is the arrangement every World Cup host nation signs up to. You build the stadiums to meet FIFA's minimum requirements. You cover all the construction costs and all the infrastructure costs. And when the tournament is over, the stadiums are yours. FIFA has never built a single World Cup stadium in its entire history, not a single one. Every venue at every World Cup has been funded by the host nation. This arrangement has never worked particularly well for host nations, and the evidence goes back decades. What has changed is the scale. When England hosted in 1966 or West Germany in 1974, the tournament only had 16 teams. Existing stadiums were largely used as they were, and costs were measured in the hundreds of millions when adjusted for inflation today. As the tournament grew to 24 teams, then 32, and now 48, the infrastructure requirements multiplied, as too did the construction costs. And then on top of this, FIFA's commercial operation became dramatically more sophisticated and even more extractive. And the reason this keeps getting worse is actually pretty simple when you think about it. FIFA makes its money from television rights and sponsorship deals, neither of which have anything to do with how much a stadium costs to build. So FIFA, they have no financial incentive whatsoever to keep the hosting costs down. And why would it? The host nation pays the bills, FIFA does not, and with each World Cup that passes, that gap gets wider, especially now with there being 16 more teams at this tournament. The 2026 World Cup is the modern exception to this pattern, and it only works because North America already had what FIFA needed. Decades of professional sport have produced stadiums large enough to meet FIFA's requirements without new construction. But even with using existing stadiums, the upgrade bill across all 16 venues was still around $2 billion. This involved natural grass replacing artificial turf, seating being removed to widen pitches, and broadcast infrastructure like television studios for the playing nations to be installed. This was all paid for by the host nations and not a penny of it by FIFA. The arrangement this time round is still extremely one-sided, but at least the stadiums were already built and the infrastructure existed. To understand what the full version of this trap looks like, we need to go back to previous World Cups, so we're going to look at South Africa, Brazil and Qatar. South Africa spent just over $3 billion hosting the 2010 World Cup, with $1.1 billion of that being spent on stadiums alone. FIFA insisted on 5 brand new venues in a country where several of the host cities had no professional football club with enough support to fill even 10% of the capacity. Cape Town Stadium is the clearest example of what that looks like a decade later. FIFA insisted on a brand new 55,000-seat stadium on the waterfront at a cost of $600 million. And the football club that now calls it home, Cape Town City FC, now averages just around 6,000 fans per match. And they're actually actively planning to leave and build something smaller. The stadium loses between $6 to $10 million every single year. And 1 in 5 Cape Town residents thinks it should be demolished. And some have even done the maths on this and have concluded that demolition is actually the cheaper long-term option. The city had originally proposed upgrading the existing Newlands Stadium, which could have been done for a fraction of the cost. but FIFA rejected it because it wanted the idyllic setting of the waterfront backdrop for the TV audience at home. FIFA, they ended up making a record profit for that tournament. But South Africa, on the other hand, spent $3 billion and ended up with stadiums that have been largely redundant ever since, still draining public money more than a decade later. Brazil spent approximately $15 billion hosting the 2014 World Cup, with $4.7 billion of that being spent on stadiums. In cities like Sao Paulo and Rio, where massive football clubs already existed, the renovated and rebuilt venues have worked reasonably well, and they're still being used today. But FIFA required 12 host cities, not 8. And the stadiums built in cities with no significant football culture like Brasilia and Manaus are the ones that tell the real story. The Mané Garrincha Stadium in Brasilia cost $900 million, which was 3 times its original budget, making it the most expensive football venue ever built after Wembley. Brasilia has no professional football team. The stadium itself ended up hosting just 7 World Cup matches. In the year after the tournament, it generated $500,000 in revenue, but this was against a monthly maintenance cost of around $150,000. Costs that ultimately couldn't be covered because running the stadium on a match day cost more than local clubs could ever make from ticket sales. It was so bad that for several years the car park was used to store city buses, before it was eventually turned over to private ownership so they could use it for private events. In Manaus, deep in the Amazon, a city with no first division club and average match attendances of just under 1,000 people, a $300 million stadium was built for just 4 World Cup matches. The maintenance cost for this stadium was $250,000 every single month. Qatar spent approximately $220 billion between being awarded the World Cup in 2010 and hosting it in 2022. To put that in context, the entire tournament generated $7.5 billion for FIFA. Qatar spent roughly 30 times that amount hosting it. Now, to be fair, most of that money was not spent on stadiums. Less than $10 billion went to the 8 venues themselves. The rest went on transforming the country's entire infrastructure. A new metro system, new airports, new roads, new hotels. Qatar effectively used the World Cup as the deadline to modernise an entire nation. Now, whether that was good value for Qatar is a separate debate, but what is not debatable is that FIFA generated billions from a tournament that cost its host nation an almost incomprehensible amount of money to stage. Stadium 974, built from 974 shipping containers, was designed to be fully dismantled after the tournament and donated to a developing nation. Workers began taking it apart in December 2022, the month the final was played, but there is still no confirmed destination of where these containers are going. It has effectively vanished and has probably just been discarded. The Lusail Stadium, which hosted the final, is having its upper tiers removed and seats donated elsewhere. Several other venues struggled to fill even a fraction of their capacity for the domestic football league. Qatar was more thoughtful about the legacy problem compared to Brazil or South Africa, but it still hasn't solved it, and the majority of the stadiums will probably be dismantled or repurposed in a few years' time. Saudi Arabia is building 11 brand new stadiums for the 2034 tournament, plus renovating 4 more. The centrepiece is going to be the King Salman International Stadium in Riyadh, which will have a capacity of 92,000 people. There's also one stadium planned for Neom, a $500 billion city in the desert that still doesn't even exist, and this pitch is going to be 350 metres above the ground. The total investment for the Saudi World Cup is going to be approximately $27 billion. The Saudi Pro League, which is the domestic competition that will inherit these stadiums after the World Cup is finished, averaged 8,355 fans per match in the 2024-25 season, and this season that had dropped to just 7,736 fans. The lowest recorded attendance at a Saudi Pro League match recently was just 85 people. This means that Saudi Arabia is building a 92,000-seat stadium for a league averaging under 10,000 fans per game. The gap between the infrastructure being built and the demand that will use it afterward is probably wider than anything we've seen before. And what's even more insane is that FIFA gave Saudi Arabia's bid the highest evaluation score in World Cup bidding history, higher than the score given to the US, Canada and Mexico for 2026. who had 23 existing stadiums ready to go with minimal work that needed to be done to them. Saudi Arabia received that score for a bid including a stadium in a city that doesn't even exist, and 11 venues still yet to be built. Amnesty International called FIFA's evaluation report an astonishing whitewash. And based on everything we've just shown you, it's really hard to argue with that. To be fair to FIFA, nobody forces countries to bid to host the World Cup. The deal is on the table before anyone signs it. And FIFA does contribute. It gives out prize money, development funds, and payments towards local organising committees. It is not as if FIFA takes everything and gives nothing back. But here is what's changed. When the US hosted in 1994, host cities shared in the commercial revenue that the World Cup produced. Hosting was completely worth it for the host cities. Since then, FIFA has brought everything in-house and pretty much removed every mechanism that previously made the deal viable, but then at the same time kept on raising the infrastructure requirements. The stadiums it mandates are left behind when the World Cup leaves, but they still drain public money for decades while FIFA, as we said, is already looking ahead to the next World Cup. FIFA has generated $10.27 billion from the 2026 World Cup. It has never spent a dollar building the venues that has made that money possible. Not in South Africa, not in Brazil, not in Qatar, not in the US, not once in the history of the tournament. The host nations built them, paid for them, and will ultimately keep paying to maintain them long after FIFA has moved on. In the next video, we're looking into something which I'm sure everyone has an opinion about while you've been watching this current World Cup: the water or hydration breaks. FIFA says it's for player welfare, so we thought we'd look into it. And let me tell you, there's a lot more to it than just player welfare. So, we'll see you in the next one.